They say life has a peculiar way of tying up loose ends. But as I sat on the sleek leather couch in Tom's pristine ultramodern home, I failed to see the humor in it. I swirled the water in my glass, feigning indifference to the laughter and cutting remarks that buzzed around me like an irritating swarm of flies. In a way, it was ironic. Tom, Sophia's new husband, was in his element, surrounded by his carefully curated entourage, a group of self-proclaimed elites reveling in their own brilliance. And then there was me, the outsider, the uninvited shadow of the past, the ex-husband they assumed was still struggling to piece his life together. At first, I believed Sophia had invited me out of goodwill, a final gesture of civility. But I soon realized it was something else entirely. This was her moment of closure, her grand finale, the last nail in the coffin of our history. Tom, eager to claim his throne, wanted to showcase his superiority, to parade himself as the upgraded version of the man she once loved. So I played along. I let them seat me in the most inconvenient corner of the room, a misplaced afterthought, a relic of the past. They ridiculed me, dissected my supposed failures, laughed at how I had never quite made it. But what they didn't realize, what not a single one of them could even begin to fathom, was that I owned them, not in the way they owned their luxury cars or their custom-tailored suits. No, I owned them the way a spider owns a fly ensnared in its web, silently, patiently, completely. They were too absorbed in their own delusions of grandeur to notice that I had barely touched my drink when Tom seized his chance to humiliate me further. He leaned forward, his flawless face illuminated by an arrogant smirk. "Daniel," he drawled, voice thick with mock concern, "tell us, what do you do these days?" The room fell silent for a beat, just long enough for tension to settle before Sophia's laughter sliced through the air, light and practiced, a sound I had heard 1,000 times before. She swirled her wine glass, pretending to ponder the question as if she had no idea. Then came the chorus of laughter. Greg, one of Tom's business associates, leaned in, amusement barely concealed behind his drink. "Still unemployed? That's rough, man. I don't know how you do it. If I didn't have a reason to wake up in the morning, I'd lose my mind." His wife, Angela, let out an exaggerated scoff. "Sophia, you're way too kind," she said, taking a slow sip of her cocktail. "If I had an ex still lurking around without a job, I'd be mortified." I offered a weak smile, not because I was embarrassed, not because her words stung, but because I was memorizing every insult, every sneer. My chest warmed with something sharp and simmering, my fingers itching in the charade right then and there, to watch their faces morph from smug amusement to sheer terror. But Tom, oblivious as ever, leaned back against the couch with a satisfied groan. "I keep telling Sophia," he mused, stretching languidly. "She really dodged a bullet." Laughter erupted once more. My grip on the glass tightened. And still, he wasn't done. He was savoring this moment, prolonging his petty triumph. "I don't mean to offend, Daniel," he continued, flashing that same insufferable grin. "But it must be hard watching her move on. You know, being with someone who can actually take care of her." Greg snickered. Sophia smirked into her glass. "That's cold, Tom," Angela giggled, nudging Sophia playfully. "If it were me, I would have blocked my ex ages ago." Sophia only smiled, the perfect picture of benevolence, as if she were too gracious to be cruel, as if she were offering me some kind of mercy. They all chuckled, drunk on their own self-importance, utterly convinced of their victory. But what none of them realized, what not a single one of them even suspected, was that I owned them, not just metaphorically, not just in a way that would bruise their egos. I literally owned them, their jobs, their careers, their futures. Every single one of them sat comfortably in that lavish mansion because of me. Greg had a job because I gave him one. Angela's promotion had been stamped with my approval. Every so-called success they believed they had earned, every ounce of power they thought belonged to them. It was mine, and they had no idea. Not yet, but they would. Soon, I had orchestrated every detail. Yet here they were, laughing at me, blind to the strings I'd been pulling all along. The final insult came when Tom raised his glass, flashing a victorious smile as if he were honoring the world's greatest failure. Then, turning to Sophia, he toasted, celebrating her for finally being with the man she truly deserved. Their glasses met with a clink, their smirks deepening as they reveled in their delusion. I lifted my own glass ever so slightly, offering a silent nod of agreement. Let them enjoy their moment. Let them bask in their illusion of power. In less than 12 hours, there would be nothing left for them to laugh about. They thought I was a failure. The pathetic ex-husband who couldn't hold down a job. The man Sophia had been wise to leave behind. They had no idea. They believed their wealth, their influence, their carefully cultivated network made them untouchable. That their financial prowess and business acumen placed them above the rest. But in reality, they were nothing more than pawns on my chessboard, moving exactly as I had arranged. For years, I had maneuvered in the shadows, securing promotions, approving acquisitions, controlling every decision that shaped their so-called success. They thought they were winning, but in truth, every victory had been placed before them by me. I had been patient. I had played the long game. And tomorrow, it would all come crashing down. Melissa, the loudest of them all, would arrive at her office only to find herself locked out, her financial misconduct exposed through an unexpected audit. Angela, so smug in her position, would open her inbox to a termination notice, the consequence of her incompetence and unethical decisions. Greg and Scott would be summoned into a private meeting, where they would be confronted with the evidence of their falsified sales reports and insider trading, crimes they had assumed no one would uncover. And then there was Tom. Tom would receive a call from his board of directors, his face paling as they informed him that, effective immediately, his financial backing had been pulled. His company, his entire empire, would begin its downward spiral before the day was over. As for Sophia, she would simply stand by, helpless, as the life she believed was secure unraveled before her eyes. At exactly 8:45 a.m., I took a slow sip of my coffee. Just another Monday morning. By 9 a.m., their world would be reduced to ashes, and I would be there to watch it all burn. Inside the towering corporate building, whispers began to spread like wildfire. Emma, the accountant, leaned toward a colleague, murmuring about an issue with Melissa's finances. A technician from IT muttered under his breath. Shaking his head, Angela was finally getting fired. Then, as we reached the entrance, Tom suddenly halted, his entire body stiffening. His fists clenched as he turned to face me, his eyes dark with fury. "You set this up," he seethed, his voice low and sharp. Melissa spun on her heel, pointing an accusatory, manicured finger in my direction. "This isn't over," she snapped, her voice dripping with disbelief. I merely grinned, slipping my hands into my pockets. "Melissa," I said smoothly, "you never realized that everything you own was never truly yours to begin with." Angela let out a stunned sigh, shaking her head before breaking into a bitter, humorless laugh. "We were laughing at you," she whispered, the weight of the truth settling in. "Mocking you at every dinner party, and you let us." I shrugged. "Would you have believed me if I told you the truth?" Silence, because the answer was no. They had been too blinded by their own arrogance, too intoxicated by the illusion of their dominance, to even consider that the man they dismissed was the one who owned everything they cherished. Tom's jaw tightened, his expression shifting from anger to something dangerously close to panic. I tilted my head, watching him carefully. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." "Life?" Tom said, stepping closer, his jaw clenched with barely restrained fury. "I have powerful connections, investors. You can't just destroy us and walk away unscathed." I cut him off with sharp, unwavering tone. "Which investors do you mean?" I asked. "The ones who pulled their funding this morning? Or the legal team that just discovered your financial records riddled with fraud?" His expression darkened, but I wasn't finished. Taking a slow, deliberate step forward, I lowered my voice. "Or maybe," I continued, "you're talking about Sophia?" His entire body stiffened. A flicker of something unreadable flashed in his eyes. She'll be thrilled to explain why she left the man who handed her everything she ever wanted, only to watch him turn into a walking regret. Silence. He had no response, because he knew I was right. At that moment, security unlocked the doors, and as they swung open, Tom shot me one last venomous glare, his face twisted with resentment. "This isn't over," he spat. I smirked. Oh, but it is. And then, just like that, they were gone. The door shut behind them, and hushed whispers rippled through the office. My right-hand executive, Sarah, approached, tablet in hand. Dramatic, she remarked, nodding toward the exit. I chuckled. They had it coming. She skimmed through her notes. Legal has finalized their terminations. Their offices are cleared out, access revoked. Melissa attempted to contact employees, but Greg's company numbers were disabled. Scott tried reaching out to competitors. She tapped her screen, but his non-compete clause makes that impossible. I nodded. They weren't just out of work. They were powerless. By the end of the day, they'll realize no one in this industry will touch them. I said coolly. The legal and financial documents in my arsenal make sure of that. And Tom. Tom was about to walk into a nightmare. By 11:30 a.m., Sophia had no doubt heard the news. I glanced toward my office, knowing the call was coming. For years, they had dismissed me as nothing more than Sophia's disgraced ex-husband. Today, they finally understood who I really was. I turned to face the remaining staff. Their eyes held a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. For those of you wondering, I began, my tone calm yet firm. Summit Innovations isn't going anywhere. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter. The room was silent. You've all worked hard under leadership that prioritized personal connections over true skill, manipulation over merit. That ends now. Some glanced at each other, nodding. Others remained frozen in shock. But I could feel the relief settling in. Greg, Melissa, Angela, Scott. They had stifled innovation, crushed potential, and used their positions to strangle progress. Now, their reign was over. I inhaled deeply, then exhaled, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I built this company from the ground up, and starting today, it will be run the way it was always meant to be. A beat of silence. Then genuine applause, real, unforced, earned. I gave a single nod before turning back to Sarah. Send an email to the entire organization. Everyone needs to know, restructuring starts today. For the first time in years, she smiled. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Standing by the doors where Tom's so-called empire had crumbled in disgrace, I allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The past was finally behind me. It had taken longer than I planned, but the future was mine. At 1:30 p.m., my phone rang. Sophia. I let it ring twice before answering. For a moment, silence. Then, her voice sharp, furious. What the hell did you do? Leaning back in my chair, I gazed out at the city skyline. I take it you've heard the news, I said smoothly. Tom just walked through the door, she snapped. Melissa's furious that you fired him, and half his executive team. Angela called me crying, threatening lawsuits. What the hell did you do? A grin tugged at my lips as I imagined the scene. Tom pacing like a caged animal, Melissa spiraling into panic, Angela scrambling for an escape route. Sophia inhaled sharply, struggling to contain her anger. She knew. She had always underestimated me. But not anymore.